Hello and welcome to the program, and happy Father's Day. Hopefully, dads across the Metroplex are being showered with gifts today and being treated to their favorite foods and beverages. And if you do have a close relationship with your father, just know that you are very, very blessed. There are way too many people who are estranged from their fathers. In fact, just this month, actor Macaulay Culkin took to social media to say that he had a complicated relationship with Father's Day because his own dad was abusive. But now that he's a dad himself, he celebrates with his kids because they made him a dad, and he wants to be the best dad possible to them. A lot of people may have never heard of the abuse that Macaulay Culkin suffered at the hands of his father, but Macaulay Culkin is not alone. So many children suffer at the hands of their parents. And with kids now out of school for the summer, many child abuse prevention advocates are asking everyday citizens like you and me to be the eyes and ears of the community when it comes to child abuse prevention. The reason? Well, when school is in session, teachers and school counselors are oftentimes the first to notice signs of abuse. And when school is not in session, those kids have no one to advocate for them. And unfortunately, according to the latest statistics here in Texas, our area, right here in North Texas, we lead the state in child abuse cases. So obviously, more needs to be done to protect our children. Today, we are going to highlight a nonprofit that is doing all that it can to do just that. And that nonprofit is Dallas CASA, Court-Appointed Special Advocates. Joining me today to talk about the work that they do is Kathleen LaValle. Kathleen is the president and CEO of Dallas CASA. She and her team are on the front lines when it comes to helping abused and neglected children here in our area. And we're going to talk about the work that they do and also talk about their Parade of Playhouses, which kicked off on Friday at North Park Center in Dallas and will run through June 30th, showcasing some pretty incredible playhouses for children. Playhouses are raffled off as a way to raise money for Dallas CASA. Want to learn more? Well, just keep listening. Kathleen, welcome to the program.
Anna, it's so great to be here. Thank you for having me.
It is so disheartening, Kathleen, to hear that child abuse cases are on the rise here in North Texas and that we lead the state in the number of cases. What do you think is leading to that rise here in our area?
I believe it could be a number of factors. The one I would really want to focus on, though, is that we as adults are taking more responsibility for the safety and protection of the children in our community. When you hear about reports and the numbers rising, we hope it's not because there's actually more abuse and severe neglect, but we hope it's because we're taking ownership. We're taking responsibility for the children in our community to make sure they're safe.
So we've raised awareness about the issue. More people are making that call to protect kids. Now, on the flip side, according to those same statistics, the number of fatalities with child abuse cases has gone down.
Well, I always caution people not to put too much emphasis on those numbers because a child can be exposed to horrific circumstances and survive. And everyone can do everything right, and a child can die. And so I really think you're right to be focusing on what are the level of reports, what does that look like, and how many children are in a situation where they need to be removed from home for their protection.
So I mentioned that you and your team are on the front lines when it comes to child abuse and neglect. What would you tell someone if they suspect that a child is in danger?
I think that you are not the expert. I tell people this all the time. You're not the investigator. It's not up to you to determine whether or not abuse has occurred. But if you see signs of it, it is your responsibility to bring that to the attention of our Child Protective Services and their partners. And so we do encourage people to call the hotline, to make an online report if you suspect, you have reason to believe that child abuse is occurring.
What if somebody says, but I don't want to get involved, I don't want to get somebody in trouble?
Well, I just ask you to examine your conscience and really make a decision that's protective of the children.
Put the children first.
Put the children first.
Kathleen, for someone not familiar with Dallas CASA, Court-Appointed Special Advocates, what would you tell them about how CASA helps those children who have been abused and neglected here in our community?
When children come into what we call broadly protective care, so that could be a foster home, a kinship placement, it could be a group home, they are facing incredible uncertainty and change in circumstances that are often frightening. What a CASA volunteer does is become that trusted, caring adult who is absolutely focused on the best interest of each child. We're appointed by our local courts who preside over child welfare cases, and the oath that each of our volunteers and staff take is to be focused on the best interest of the child. Now, that can mean really doing everything possible to support the parents, because we know that kids do better when they're with family. And so our number one goal, if it's at all possible, is to support reunification with family. And so that is in the best interest of the child in many, many circumstances. And if that's not possible, we look for relatives, because we know that children also do better when they're in the loving support of their family members, their relatives, because they have that sense of belonging. They have that cultural connection. And so that's part of what we do. And then, we also make recommendations. If neither of those are available options, we make recommendations about whether or not another plan for permanency is best for the child, including adoption. We have some incredible adoptive parents out there.
How do you describe the work that the court-appointed special advocate does? Because they're volunteers.
Right. And so unlike a caseworker, we are, again, focused solely on that child. We are placed in really a unique position, because sometimes we'll be able to get information that's helpful for the well-being of the child, because people don't identify us as the state agency or contractor who is doing the case management work. We are focused on the child. What we're trying to do is advise our judges what are the medical, educational, and therapeutic needs of this child so they can begin to heal from whatever trauma they've been exposed to. So that is really one of the key roles and responsibilities, in addition to, of course, forming that loving, caring connection, because our children that we serve frequently have not had that model of a trusting, reliable, I show up when I say I will adult. And that's what we hope our CASA volunteers are and mean to children. We've been referred to as the lifeline for children in foster care, and that's because we do more than look at the sum of a child's challenging and difficult history and circumstances. We truly try to focus on restoring a sense of childhood for each child, and for restoring a sense of hope. There's so many risks to a child who comes into the foster care system, and one of the greatest is that they'll give up on themselves. They'll give up hoping. They'll think that they are somehow different. I've even heard, young adults who had experience in foster care say they felt like people thought it was their fault that they were in foster care. Now, you and I, Anna, can think about that and go, that's outrageous. How could a child ever think that? But that is a real possibility. And so what we hope we do as Dallas CASA volunteers and staff is really make sure that child doesn't feel defined, doesn't feel limited by the fact that they've spent time in foster care, and that they see themselves as possibilities, as dreams, rather than just what the restrictions are, what the limitations are. Because, if you have an adult who expresses faith and hope and confidence in a child and what they can do and what they can become, where they can go, that really will help enforce a sense of confidence in the child, so that they will be able to have those healthy, trusting attachments going forward, which is what we hope our volunteer advocates model.
How big is the need right now for you to have volunteer court-appointed special advocates?
We have an ongoing need always to be recording volunteer advocates. We ask for a minimum of 1 year or one case of service by volunteer advocates. So we have those who have served more than 25 years in this incredible role. It's really part of the fiber of their being. But we also have, we have constant change, and we have, folks who move out of the area, folks who fulfill that commitment of one case, and move on. So we're always in recruitment mode. And I hope that those who are listening can try to imagine themselves doing this incredibly profound and important role. There's really nothing like it. I know that many of our advocates come into this service, insecure, questioning whether I have the skill set. They don't have social work background. They may not have legal background. They may have really no exposure to the child welfare world. And they come in and we train them very effectively. We support them very strongly. And you end up with volunteers who realize they really were born to do this work.
What about the ones that say, I would love to, but I feel like it would be too difficult to deal with children who've been abused and neglected, that I wouldn't be able to deal with that emotionally myself?
Well, there are really two things. One is to remind everyone that we're really focused on the future of this child. You're not an investigator. You're not trying to delve into the details of whatever the abuse or trauma has been. You're very forward-looking for, looking at those solutions, and you will be blown away at the resilience of our children and by other stakeholders in the process. I really think we inspire each other to do great things for families and for children. And so I think if you think of it in terms of, wouldn't it be more difficult to stay on the sidelines and simply be outraged? I think that's really the message we want to deliver. But also if it's something that, the timing isn't right, whatever the reservations may be, there are so many other ways to support Dallas CASA. It's volunteers and it's staff. You can join our young professionals group. You can join our auxiliary called the Children's Council. You can come to our events. So any way in which you can raise awareness to the opportunity to take on this incredibly critical role of a child advocate really benefits the children.
And if somebody wants information about becoming a court-appointed special advocate, find out more at dallascasa.org. That's dallascasa.org. My guest once again today is Kathleen LaValle, the president and CEO of Dallas CASA, Court-Appointed Special Advocates. They are a nonprofit that helps abused and neglected children here in North Texas. Their mission is to protect children, restore childhood, and help child victims of abuse and neglect achieve their full potential. Now, according to the Centers for Disease Control, at least 1 in 7 children experience child abuse or neglect in the past year in the United States. And this is likely an underestimate because many cases are unreported. Among the many agencies helping the victims of this crime is Dallas CASA, Court-Appointed Special Advocates. And Kathleen has been telling us about their work and also how we can help raise awareness and funds. And one way that we can do just that, and you mentioned events, is the Parade of Playhouses at North Park Center in Dallas. The event just kicked off on Friday, June 14th. It runs through the end of the month, June 30th. And if somebody wants information about that, they can go to the website. But what can you tell me about this year's Parade of Playhouses, Kathleen?
Well, in addition to going to the website, I really hope you'll come out to North Park Center. What a gallery for the display of our playhouses. It's really an extraordinary venue, and we always feel that special treatment from the North Park team. I always say that their level of concierge service for this event is just extraordinary, and so we're so thankful to them for having hosted this event. This will now be our 29th year.
That's amazing. So what kind of playhouses are going to be out this year?
Well, incredibly, we have 16 playhouses on display, which is a huge number. And so you're going to have lots of choices for where to put your raffle ticket and what house you want to take a chance on. So we have a firehouse by our presenting sponsor, Crest Cadillac and Auto, and it's just absolutely adorable. The Dallas Mavericks have outperformed themselves this year in this incredible season, built a playhouse that is modeled after a high-top athletic shoe.
Oh, cool.
And it has slides, wall climbing. I mean, it's really absolutely fantastic. Definitely based on every child's vision and fantasy of what a Mavericks playhouse would look like. We have an ice cream store. We have a conservatory where you'll look up and there's a telescope, and you can, in the night skies, it comes with sleeping bags. So it's kind of my image of being in a playhouse is that,
absolutely.
that overnight you see, how long you could stay out there before you go running back into the house. But there's so much imagination packed into the playhouses this year. We have 3 playhouses from Women Leading Technology, which is just an extraordinary group that encourages STEM education in young women. And so you really want to come out and see those 3 incredible playhouses. And the Highland Park High School has an inspired creation based on the oldest house in Highland Park, the Munns and Wise house that I think was built in 1916. And so a replication of that house is also on display among so many others. I just think that our builders really outdid themselves in the designs this year. One looks like a mountain you could climb. And so please come out. You have to see them in person to really appreciate the creativity and the craftsmanship. We have LRO creates a house. They're a luxury home builder, and they create a house every year that we anxiously await because many of them are referred to as she sheds, meaning that grown women will be buying those raffle tickets. And this year's is a glass cottage. So many to see. We hope you'll come out.
And the raffle tickets, $5 for a raffle ticket. That enters you in for a chance to win. I love that it's not an auction. Everyone has a chance to win. It's not going to be the highest bid. Everybody can buy a raffle ticket, and that money is going to go to Dallas CASA for your programs that you provide to help our children here in our area who've been the victims of abuse and neglect. So if you want to see these incredible playhouses, you can go to the website, dallascasa.org, or just go to North Park Center. While you're doing some shopping, you can buy a raffle ticket and be entered to win one of these many playhouses benefiting Dallas CASA. So we talked about how volunteers are needed. What is that training like for the volunteers? Because with a name like court-appointed special advocates, you would think, like you said earlier, that you would need some social work background or some legal background, but that's not necessary.
Right. I think that's a common misconception. So you don't need any particular training or background to apply to become a Dallas CASA volunteer. We will take care of training you. It's an intense 30-hour training program that is hybrid. Some of it is online, and then 4 sessions are in person. And I really think that our volunteer applicants come away from this boot camp really ready for the next phase, which is going into the support and the partnership with our professional program staff who will be paired with you so that you don't feel overwhelmed and you feel like you have that experience on your side based on that partnership. So you go through the 30 hours of training, and then our local judges will swear you in as a court-appointed special advocate. And then again, you'll be paired with a supervisor so you don't feel like you are in over your head.
We don't throw you into the deep end. You are paired with a supervisor who's going to show you the ropes. So when you first start out, if any questions that you may have, they can help you on that journey.
Absolutely. And they go to every first experience with you, if that's visiting a child in a foster home. And then they attend every court hearing with you, because that may be the venue where many of our volunteers have the least experience. And so we want to make sure that you always feel supported in that role when you report to the judges. What are the needs of this child? Are they being met? And what other recommendations are you making on behalf of this child?
So many times when people talk about volunteering, they say, I just don't have time. I've got a full-time job. I've got my family. Besides the 30 hours of the training, what is the actual time commitment? You said you want them to commit for a year, but what is the actual time commitment during a week or a month look like?
So it absolutely depends on the stage of the case, because when you first get involved, you're probably going to want to go to the Child Protective Services offices, and is now being handled by a contractor, Empower, for our district, our region. And you're going to want to look at the case file, find out what was the history with this family. And so those early days can be more intense. We typically tell people to assume 10 to 15 hours a month. And I can tell you that the vast, vast majority of our volunteers are full-time employed, if that gives you any kind of indication.
It's not retired people.
It's not. And in fact, this is a statistic. I hope the community is incredibly proud of this. But last year, of our new volunteer applicants, 49% were in their 20s and 30s.
Oh, that is awesome to hear.
That just gives me such hope.
Yeah.
It tells me where our younger folks are focused, and the fact that they recognize that giving back to the community is part of who they are. And many of their employers recognize when they make that opportunity available to them to serve in the community, they actually are reinforcing that employee's commitment to their company or their organization, because they recognize that, we live in a community. We should support our community.
What is the feedback that you get from the volunteers once they begin that journey with CASA?
Our volunteers are incredible. I mean, they always wish they could do more, right? I mean, it's really, we certainly hear that. We hear frequently that they're surprised at how much impact they're able to have, even in small ways to the most significant ways. And so it's really about that sense of purpose and impact. I really don't know any volunteer experience that can equal that of being a CASA volunteer when it comes to realizing in the short term that you're making a difference and recognizing that could be a lasting difference that could really stay with that child throughout their life. I mean, having that sense that there is someone in my corner who really I can anticipate showing up. I know that they are focused on my concerns. They listen to me. I feel heard. I mean, that is something that we hear from our youth in foster care, is that CASA volunteer. They know when they say, "How are you doing?" that they expect a full response from the child, not a quick and easy, "I'm fine." But really, they know that CASA volunteer and staff will be listening for, what does this child need? What is holding them back? What are they afraid of? What do they think they're missing out on? How can I make them feel more secure and really more seen when they're going through such an incredibly difficult time?
My guest once again, Kathleen LaValle, the president and CEO of Dallas CASA, court-appointed special advocates. They are a nonprofit that helps abused and neglected children here in our area, and their vision is a time when all children experience safe and enriching childhoods. You can find out more about the work that they do, about volunteer opportunities, and more at dallascasa.org. And while you're there, find out more about the Parade of Playhouses, which is now underway at North Park Center in Dallas. It kicked off Friday and runs through June 30th. The website, once again, dallascasa.org. You touched upon several times about how the CASA volunteer is the one constant in their life. Can you tell me a little bit about the turnover that they see with switching schools, with switching foster families, with possibly even switching the Child Protective Service agent that's with them?
I'll start out with the casework that's involved when a child comes into foster care. We always have had a situation where there's a certain amount of turnover when the state agency was in charge of case management. Well, starting on March 1st of this year, that case management became the responsibility of a contractor called Empower for our region. And what that means is that in the lead up to that transition, you saw many of our state agency caseworkers leave that position because they may have had vested benefits, the retirement with the state, and they wanted to stay a state employee, certainly understandable. So what ends up happening when you go through this transition in case management is that you've already experienced turnover in that assigned caseworker, and even that assigned caseworker then may not transition to become an employee of Empower. And because we have seen serious workforce challenges in that area, it really makes the role of the CASA volunteer so much more critical because we carry the history of that family. We may be the only constant in that child's life. You mentioned other kinds of changes. Certainly our children move from school to school when their placement changes, and so they can experience, that changing in terms of just their placement, where they're staying, and so
they never feel safe because there's so much change, so much upheaval.
And sometimes when you see some of the behaviors that are challenging for children who have been traumatized, it really is associated with that trauma, and understanding the why of some of those challenging behaviors is so important so that we can best support the children so that placements can be stable, because it's not just the trauma that child has experienced. When you add into that change, moving from one household to another, maybe into a residential treatment center or even a psychiatric hospital, what you're feeding back to this child on a too consistent basis is impermanence and change. And sometimes they'll even, self-destructive behavior, self-sabotage, because it's, I will reject you before you reject me. And that's why it's so important that we give each child that sense, that foundation of stability and consistency and caring.
What is the impact that you see that a CASA volunteer has on the life of a child?
I think the most significant impact is allowing a child to see past today, to see past the trauma they've experienced in their history, to find out, what is their dream, what is their vision, and help them fulfill that, and let them know that they're no different in the sense of they can have dreams. Those dreams can come true, and that you believe in that world of possibility for them, because I think it's the loss of that hope that really is such a danger to children who have grown up and then even aged out of foster care. The risks of homelessness, food insecurity, sexual exploitation, incarceration, they are so high. There are 30% of 19-year-olds who exited the system are homeless. Yeah. Another 20% are homeless because they're incarcerated. And that's because we never were able to achieve for them that sense of permanence and that sense of an adult being vested in their future and in their recovery. And that recovery includes that sense of childhood that really is projected in the Parade of Playhouse event. And, one of the issues we always like to emphasize with the Parade of Playhouses is that there's no event, no activity we do all year long that brings more attention to the opportunity to become a CASA volunteer than Parade of Playhouses. We receive more applicants who say, I heard about you through Parade of Playhouses than we do any other source. And that's why, we are so grateful to the sponsors and supporters and builders and volunteers for Parade of Playhouses. And I have to give a huge shout out to the Dallas community. We are the only urban program of our size that serves 100% of children.
Oh, that's incredible.
In foster care in our county. And there are over 900 independent CASA programs around the country. And we serve more children with volunteer advocates than any of them. And we would never have been able to achieve that capacity without the volunteers. I hope some of you are listening, can hear me bragging about you. But, that commitment is really so key. So for the 5 years, the first 5 years where we were able to consistently take 100% of court appointments, we served over 7,000 children with 2,700 volunteer advocates. And I just have to, share my admiration and appreciation for a community that can support and can grow and can raise that kind of support for children.
And the Parade of Playhouses is now up at North Park Center. It kicked off on Friday, runs through June 30th. It's a raffle, so anyone could win these incredible playhouses. Find out more at dallascasa.org. org. That's DallasCasa.org. We would love to see you out there. And yeah, so many people that go to the mall may have never even heard of Dallas Casa and don't know about your mission and what you do. And yet you're raising awareness about the issue of child abuse and neglect and about the great work that Dallas Casa does. I want to thank my guest, Kathleen LaValle, the president and CEO of Dallas Casa, for being on the program today. Kathleen, thank you so much.
Oh, it's just always a pleasure to visit with you. Thank you so much, Anna.